Welcome back to some new r/malicious compliance stories. I hope you had a great day. Today's stories involve a company that burns millions of dollars just because one employee wants to get it in writing. So sit back, relax and enjoy the video. The first story is called "We Spent Millions on It." I worked at a telecommunication customer service a few years back. It was my first non-fast food job, so I was pretty stoked. And to be honest, the work environment was sweet. I was doing customer support for one of the big packages in the Midwest. We had to take a technical test upon interviewing. If you managed to score high enough, they would allow you to move straight into their small business support team instead of starting in residential. I was in school for network systems administration at the time, and I aced that test. They called me within an hour of leaving and offered me the job working for their small business support. The truly great part about doing small business support instead of residential was that we had a plethora of extra tools. And we didn't have to follow the workflow their intuitive troubleshooting program would suggest for us to do for issues. This usually led to much faster results and happier customers, as we were able to really show off just how far we were willing to go to resolve their issues instead of just reading the screen word for word. A few months pass and our call center starts losing some of their calls to overseas centers. As to why, your guess is as good as mine, but it led to the center deciding we would be moving all small business calls to a center in Texas. Everyone at our center would be forced to go residential, but we would keep our same pay. So I wasn't terribly upset over it at the time. They told us, however, about a week in that they implemented their worst policy change. We want all of our reps to follow the intuitive troubleshooting program word for word based on the issue your customer is having. Now, I wasn't super upset until I realized how dumb this software really was. You would select that someone has no internet and it would ask you to have them try to browse to our website. You could put in that the modem had no lights and they would still suggest the same three things regardless. Try to browse, try to reboot, press the reset pin. On what would be my last day, I get called in for helping a customer log into their modem to reset their Wi-Fi password when my workflow advised me to reboot. I explained my reasoning and had them finish the call to verify the customer was stoked. But they didn't care, because I was wasting the millions they spent on this stupid software that I can only guess was coded by someone who had never used the products in their life. So from then on, I did just as the workflow advised. I rebooted, made people angry and ignored their concerns to continue with the workflow, regardless of how dumb the next action item it wanted me to take was. The cable box has no lights on it? No problem, I'll ship you a new remote because that's what my software says to do. Oh, you need a Wi-Fi password and it isn't on the back of your modem? Guess I sent you a $100 technician to replace it. This led to my boss pulling me back in the next day to say that I was taking everything too literally and needed to decide to either conform or quit. I handed him my badge and left without a word. They called for the next 2 weeks on and off, as half the center started hitting the same frustrations and issues. About 3 months later, they shut down. So they decided to screw him over for giving the customer better service? Well, no wonder this company no longer exists. The next story is called "You Are Not Allowed to Decide That." This was some time ago, probably early 2000s. I've worked in K-12 education technology for most of my 20 plus years in my professional career. When I first started, I was the only technician for a small to medium-sized school district, 2,500 or so students. During the time of this event, the director of special education was married to the superintendent. I reported to the business manager, who used to teach technology but was not a technical person. For the most part, I was left to do my work and was not overly micromanaged. So I got into a habit of taking my lunch whenever I felt like it, or even not at all. If I didn't take lunch and there was no pressing work, I would just leave a little early at the end of the day. Of course, I made sure all the schools were out before I left. As time went on, I got in trouble for leaving early. So I would take my lunch whenever time permitted. Sometimes it was when there was only an hour left from work, sometimes not. But I would chill at my desk and just screw off. The others in the office where my desk was reported me for screwing off every afternoon. When I tried to explain to the business manager that I was taking my lunch, she said something to the effect of, "You can no longer take your lunch whenever you want. Your lunch is from 12 to 1. I say no problem, message received. So starting that day, no matter what I was doing, at 12 I would stop what I was doing and take my lunch. If I was at my desk, I would screw off. If I was at a school site, I would go sit in my car. Fast forward a month or two later. At about 11:30, the director of special education calls me and says his computer is not working and I need to come to fix it right away. I say sure thing, on my way. When I get to his office, he says please fix it and heads off to our meeting. So I start in on removing all spyware he has managed to collect. At this time all employees were local admins on their desktops. About a third of the way through, 12 hits. I stand up and walk out of his office and tell his secretary I'll be back in an hour. Out to my car I go, expecting a phone call any minute. And sure enough, about 15 minutes in, I get a phone call from the business manager. I hear you walked out of the special education director's office without fixing his computer. Correct, it's my lunchtime. What do you mean, you couldn't fix his computer first? I could have, but you told me that I could not decide when my lunch break was, that I had to take lunch from 12 to 1. Wait, that's not what I meant. But that is what you said. If I stayed and worked on the computer and took my lunch at 1 or 1:30, I did not want to get in trouble for screwing off when I was supposed to be working. Okay, I call you back. She calls back about 15 minutes later, asking if I can please go back in and finish his computer. And from now on, I can decide when the best time to take my lunch is. It was never talked about again. It was nice being able to go home early when I didn't have my lunch again. I don't know what I find more troublesome, that his coworkers decided to run to the manager because he is taking his break, or that the manager actually thought it was realistic to give him fixed times. What do you think? Well, at least they learned from their mistake. The third story is called Alter the Reports. Back in 2016, I took over as a lab manager. The previous guy running the lab, as well as the boss, were the golden children and could do no wrong. I later found out that they were omitting all kinds of information on monthly reports to make the numbers look good. My first month, I ran the reports and submitted the inventory report to the admin. I found 85 items that were red tagged, failed diagnostics test, non-operational. The admin called me, asking why it is so different from the previous month, as there were only 5 assets on the previous report. I tell them I have no clue why that is, and that I am simply doing truth in reporting our inventory. They tell me to remove the information and make it match the previous month. I explain that these are all the failed and broken assets on hand. But they tell me that they don't want to explain to upper management about a change to 85 failed assets from just 5. I run this through my boss and explain the truth in reporting, and he says just do it. So I deleted the data to match the previous month's report, and everyone is happy. I am submitting these altered reports for 5 months with no complaints. The higher-ups do an unannounced walkthrough one day and decide to look at our master inventory. They see the list of red tag assets and ask why there are so many and that it doesn't match the reports they get. I explain that I simply submit the data that my boss tells me to submit. They aren't happy with that answer. My boss gets chewed out. But poop rolls downhill and I get yelled at which point I remind him about what he wanted me to do. A week later, they are asking for complete proof and reporting and want to see all red tagged assets on the monthly report. Lucky me, I already knew what was going on with them and was easy to update the status. We quickly resolved all the issues, repairs and refurbishing, and I am recognized for running an amazing lab with an award from our inspectors. The management learns that the golden child actually just scams the system. Good for the management. And that the admins wanted him to remove all the reports just shows that it's just one big pile of garbage. That management should really start looking into whom they have employed. Or do you see it any different? If you enjoy the video, please don't forget to hit the like button, it really helps the channel. The last story is called I Need It in Writing. This happened about 15 years ago at a large manufacturing plant. I was one of 120 industrial electricians, and this happened in the department in which I was primarily responsible. Our safety administrator retired, so a new guy started and decided to audit all of the lockout-tagout procedures everywhere in the facility. This place employed 4,000 people and was over 1.5 million square feet, so it was a massive undertaking. Many of the machines in my department were large multi-station transfer machines, where the part goes into several drilling, milling, tapping, boring operations and are transferred to the station in turn between operations. Basically, the operator loads a raw part into it, and once it comes back around to him or her, it's finished. The cycle time for this machine was about 1 minute and was a key part in expensive final products, costing upwards of $50,000 each. It was made clear to me that the company lost $50,000 for every minute the machine was idle, as a way of instilling urgency, as if I needed it. As I said, the machine had multiple stations that each had its own specialized operation to accomplish, all automatically. This, of course, involved many switches, buttons, computers, motors, encoders, drivers, all of which are used in industrial automation and sequencing. Usually, when an electrical part broke on a particular station, I would shut down the electrical power for that one station to perform my repairs and replacements. All was good, and I could usually perform just about any repair within 15 minutes or less. The management people usually didn't even know anything unusual happened, as the operators were on piecework and would often skip a break to make up the shortfall. Until the new LOTO procedures were released for those machines. The new procedure required anyone performing repairs to LOTO every station for every kind of energy potential. This included electrical, pneumatic, hydraulic and gravity. Since this was a union facility, this required the service of an electrician, a plumber, a mechanic and a millwright. It also required something like 38 individual logs to be applied by the aforementioned skilled trade persons. It also required about 4 to 8 hours of work to complete this task. Keep in mind, these were huge machines that would take up an area the size of a gymnasium and cost tens of millions of dollars to buy. When I saw the new LOTO procedure, I grabbed my boss and the production supervisor. I showed it to them and explained in detail why this was ridiculous, unnecessary and unworkable. My boss got the safety administrator and we all had a conference, and I was told basically that's the way it is. The very next day, a type of switch called a proximity switch failed on one of these machines, normally a 5 to 10 minute repair. Cue malicious compliance. I dutifully informed the production supervisor that he lost his machine for the rest of the shift and half the following shift. He chuckled and said, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Dude, I'm dead serious." I got my boss, told him I needed 38 LOTO logs, a plumber, a mechanic and a millwright. He looked at me like I had 3 heads. Remember the conversation we had yesterday? It just got real. Show me why you need 38 logs. I brought him to the machine, pulled the 10-page illustrated, notated, laminated LOTO procedure of the machine and counted where each and every log needs to go. And I need the other tradesmen here as well. I figure the machine will be rendered safe by the end of the shift. One can do the repair and another 4 hours to remove the logs and set the machine up to be ready to run by the lunchtime. Also, keep in mind that there will be cribbing to make the gravity potential safe, and most logs need a special kind of hardware to apply to valves and other devices to be able to function correctly. Just fix it the way you usually fix it, my boss told me. Put it in writing, I said. Just fix the damn thing, was his unhelpful reply. I think you need to give it to me in writing, or you need to get my union rep here. Those are your 2 choices. I'm not gonna get fired over this. About this time, several men in suits and ties showed up to find out what the problem is, called into action by the production supervisor I previously mentioned. He and I had a great working relationship and he knew what was going down. So he started making phone calls when I let him know his machine was broken. To make a long story short, an hour-long meeting was held, which included my union rep, after which I was provided written permission to make the repairs as I always had. The new safety administrator had been properly scolded and learned a lesson. Management learned to just let me do my job, and the machine was running 10 minutes after I received the paper. That was a loss of $3.5 million, according to their math. It would have been $24 million lost if I had to follow their procedures to the letter. All new procedures were put in place with much input from my colleagues and me. This was a test case for how the other 500 skilled tradespeople were going to be proceeding with the new safety guy, as they had also been provided with new, ridiculous LOTO procedures. It just turned out that I was the first to have to implement them. This shows the power of the first rule of malicious compliance. Always get it in writing. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.